The Age of Exploration and Renaissance, 1500, 1700. By the late 1400s and early 1500s, the world was entering a new age. Exploration connected the continents, the Renaissance transformed art and science in Europe, and new powers rose. This period can be called the early modern period. It includes the Renaissance, the Reformation, global exploration, and the beginnings of colonization and modern science. European voyages and discoveries. In 1492, an Italian navigator named Christopher Columbus, sailing for Spain, famously discovered the Americas. He actually landed in the Caribbean, and people were already living in the Americas, of course. This voyage was part of a broader trend. Europeans were searching for sea routes to Asia. In 1498, Vasco da Gama from Portugal sailed around Africa's Cape of Good Hope and reached India, opening direct trade with Asia. Soon, Spanish, Portuguese, English, and French explorers traveled across the world. Ferdinand Magellan's expedition even sailed around the globe. 1519, 1522. Magellan died en route, but his crew finished the circumnavigation. These explorations were driven by the hope of finding gold, spices, and new lands. The results of this age of exploration were dramatic. Europeans encountered the Americas and their peoples, leading to a huge exchange of plants, animals, and unfortunately diseases. Between the Old World, Europe, Africa, Asia, and the New World, Americas. This is called the Columbian Exchange. For example, Europeans brought horses, cows, and wheat to the Americas, and took back potatoes, tomatoes, corn, and cocoa to the Old World. However, diseases like smallpox, brought by Europeans, devastated indigenous American populations who had no immunity. In the 1500s, the Spanish conquered powerful empires in the Americas. Hernán Cortés conquered the Aztecs by 1521, and Francisco Pizarro conquered the Incas by 1533. Spain and Portugal claimed vast territories. Portugal took Brazil in South America, and colonies in Africa and Asia, like Goa in India. Spain took most of South and Central America, amassing huge wealth from silver and gold mines worked by native people and enslaved Africans. Colonialism and the slave trade. With these discoveries came colonial empires. Spain, Portugal, and later other Europeans like the British, French, and Dutch established colonies overseas. This led to one of history's saddest chapters, the Atlantic slave trade. From the 1500s to the 1800s, millions of Africans were forcibly taken from their homes and shipped across the Atlantic to the Americas to work on plantations, growing sugar, cotton, tobacco, etc. It's estimated that about 12 million Africans were transported, facing horrific conditions. The slave trade and slavery caused immense human suffering, but it also had a huge impact on the population and culture of the Americas. African traditions, music, and culture strongly influenced the New World, even as enslaved people struggled for freedom. The Renaissance and scientific advances. Meanwhile, in Europe, the Renaissance, which means rebirth, was in full swing by the 1500s. It was a time of brilliant artists like Leonardo da Vinci, who painted the Mona Lisa around 1503–1506, and Michelangelo, who painted the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Renaissance thinkers emphasized human potential and achievements. This is called humanism. People started to question old ideas and observe the world for themselves, which led to the scientific revolution. For example, Nicolaus Copernicus in 1543 proposed that the Earth revolves around the Sun, and not vice versa. Later, Galileo Galilei, in the early 1600s, used a telescope to study the skies, finding evidence for Copernicus's sun-centered solar system. This sometimes brought conflict with the Church, which taught an earth-centered view. The period also saw invention and improvement of technologies. Compasses for navigation, which actually were invented earlier in China and reached Europe, better ships, caravels, and devices like clocks. In 1687, Isaac Newton published his laws of gravity, greatly advancing physics. Reformation and religious change. The unity of the Catholic Church in Western Europe began to crack in the 1500s. In 1517, a German monk named Martin Luther wrote his 95 Theses, criticizing certain church practices. This event sparked the Protestant Reformation. Many people, especially in Northern Europe, broke away from the Catholic Church and formed new Protestant churches, like Lutherans, Calvinists, Anglicans. This led to religious conflicts and even wars between Catholics and Protestants in Europe. For example, the 30 Years' War, 1618–1648, was very destructive in Central Europe, but it also encouraged people to read the Bible in their own languages, not just Latin, which was helped by the printing press spreading literature. Powerful empires outside Europe. Europe was not the only place of change. In the Middle East, the Ottoman Empire rose to great power. The Ottomans, who were Turkish Muslims, conquered Constantinople in 1453, ending the Byzantine Empire. By the 1500s, under Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, the Ottoman Empire spanned Southeast Europe, Western Asia, and North Africa. They were a major force, controlling key trade routes. In Persia, Iran, the Safavid Empire, 1501–1736, flourished as a center of art and culture, especially famous for beautiful rugs and architecture. Practicing Shia Islam. In South Asia, the Mughal Empire was established in 1526 by Babur, a descendant of Genghis Khan and Timur. The Mughals, who were Muslims, ruled most of India and are known for their rich culture and architecture. For example, the Taj Mahal was built by Emperor Shah Jahan in the 17th century as a tomb for his wife. The Mughals presided over a golden age of painting, literature, and tolerance between religions, especially under Emperor Akbar the Great. In East Asia, as noted, China's Ming Dynasty, 1368–1644, was strong early in this period. They built the famous Forbidden City in Beijing and sponsored Zheng He's voyages. Later, the Ming were succeeded by the Qing Dynasty, 1644–1912, which was established by Manchu people from the north. During the early modern period, China remained very powerful and populous, though it limited foreign trade, allowing it only in certain ports like Canton. Japan during the 1500s went through civil wars, but by 1603, the Tokugawa shogunate, military government, unified Japan, and then isolated the country from most foreign contact for about 250 years, with the exception of limited trade with Dutch and Chinese. This isolation kept Japan stable internally, but it also meant they fell a bit behind in technology by the time Western powers forced Japan to open up in the 1850s. Cultural and social changes. The early modern period saw cultural flourishing. William Shakespeare wrote his plays around 1600. In Spain, Miguel de Cervantes wrote Don Quixote, 1605. In China, novels like Journey to the West were written in the 1500s. There were also social changes. In some places, the merchant class, traders and business people, gained more wealth and influence due to global trade. A system of global trade developed. European ships carried goods and connected Asia, Africa, and the Americas. This is the beginning of globalization. New foods like potatoes and corn from the Americas became staples in Afro-Eurasia. For instance, potatoes became very important in Europe and China. However, it's important to remember life was still hard for many. Most people were farmers. Life expectancy was lower than today, and illnesses that are now easily cured could be deadly then. Wars and conquests caused suffering, and the labor of enslaved people and serfs made much of the wealth possible. Towards the late 1600s, some thinkers started emphasizing reason and science even more. This led to the Enlightenment in the 1700s, which we'll discuss next. Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke and Voltaire argued for education, science, and even questioned absolute monarchies, planting seeds for modern democracy and human rights.